The twin suns of Cthar blazed mercilessly over the vast desert landscape, casting long shadows across the ancient ceremonial grounds where the Sand Wolf clan had gathered. The Blood Moon Festival was in full swing, with drumbeats echoing through the evening air and the scent of spiced meats roasting over open fires. Warriors danced in intricate patterns around the central bonfire, their lupin features illuminated by the flickering flames, displaying their strength and agility in movements that told stories of ancient hunts and legendary battles. Dr. Eris Thorne stood awkwardly at the periphery of the celebration, his human form looking painfully out of place among the powerful lupin humanoids. He tugged nervously at the collar of his adaptive climate suit, which, despite its advanced technology, still left him feeling uncomfortably warm in the desert heat. As an astrobiologist from Earth, Eris had spent the last 3 months studying Cthar's unique ecosystem under the reluctant protection of the Sandwolf clan. His research station, a small outpost of scientific equipment and modest living quarters, sat on the outskirts of the clan's territory, a constant reminder of his outsider status. "You look like you're about to faint, Earthman," came a low, amused voice beside him. Eris turned to find Lyra, the clan chieftain's daughter and most skilled hunter, regarding him with those piercing amber eyes that never failed to make him feel transparent. She stood nearly a head taller than him, her lean, muscular form adorned with ceremonial leather and traditional clan symbols painted in red ochre across her gray-brown fur. The moonlight caught the silver ornaments woven into her mane, symbols of her hunting prowess and status within the clan. "Just adapting," Eris managed, offering a weak smile. "The cultural significance of the Blood Moon Festival is fascinating. I've been taking notes on the symbolic representations in the dance patterns and always studying, never experiencing," Lyra interrupted, her tone somewhere between mockery and genuine curiosity. "Your kind observes life instead of living it." Eris couldn't deny the truth in her words. Behind his scientific objectivity lay a lifetime of cautious observation rather than participation. On Earth, he'd been more comfortable among his specimens and data sets than at social gatherings. Here on Cthar, that disconnect was even more pronounced. "The clan honors your presence tonight," Lyra continued, her gaze returning to the dancers. "Though many question my father's wisdom in allowing you to observe our sacred ceremonies. I'm grateful for the opportunity," Eris replied sincerely, "and I understand the privilege it represents." Lyra made a non-committal sound in her throat, a rumbling acknowledgement that Eris had come to recognize as typical of the clan's communication style. Despite her outward indifference, he had noticed how she occasionally intervened when other clan members became too hostile toward him. He'd never understood why she bothered, given her obvious skepticism about his presence. As the drumming intensified, the dancers moved with increasing fervor. The crowd parted to make way for a young warrior who approached where Eris and Lyra stood. Eris recognized him as Kale, one of the most aggressive of the younger warriors, who had made no secret of his disdain for the human scientist. "Why does our greatest hunter waste her time guarding the soft skin?" Kale sneered, his words clearly intended to be heard by those nearby. Several onlookers turned their attention to the confrontation, the tension immediately palpable. "He trembles at our sacred dances like prey before the killing bite." Eris felt his face flush with embarrassment, but remained silent. He'd learned that showing weakness only invited more aggression from the clan warriors. Lyra's posture shifted subtly, her stance becoming more dominant. "The chieftain assigned me to watch the earth scientist. Are you questioning my father's judgment, Kale?" "I question why we need this creature studying us like we're his specimens," Kale replied, stepping closer to Eris, towering over him with deliberate intimidation. "Perhaps he should demonstrate his worth to the clan. Or is he too fragile to participate in our traditions?" Several observers murmured in agreement, and Eris felt the familiar sensation of being an unwelcome outsider intensify. He glanced toward the main gathering, where Lyra's father, Chief Torkak, sat observing the festivities with the clan elders. The chieftain's expression revealed nothing, but Eris knew he was watching the interaction. Kale's provocation continued as he reached out and flicked Eris's shoulder with his clawed fingers. See? Soft. Weak. Unworthy of clan protection. Before Eris could respond, Lyra stepped between them. What happened next occurred so quickly that Eris barely registered the sequence. Lyra moved with lightning speed, her hand shooting out toward Kale. Her claws extended just enough to lightly scrape along the edge of Kale's ear, not drawing blood, but clearly a warning gesture. Enough, she growled. He is under clan protection by the chieftain's decree. Challenge that again, and you challenge the chieftain himself. Kale's eyes widened momentarily before narrowing in anger. He took a step back, clearly understanding the significance of the gesture in a way Eris did not. The gathered crowd had gone silent, watching the confrontation with intense interest. What Eris failed to grasp was that Lyra's action, the warning scrape along Kale's ear, was a traditional dominance display among the clan, a clear message to back down or face more serious consequences. It was not, as his panicked mind interpreted it, an attack on Kale that might escalate into violence against Lyra. Acting on a surge of misplaced protective instinct and fueled by weeks of feeling powerless, Eris did the unthinkable. He reached up toward Lyra's ear and, mimicking what he thought was a clan gesture of solidarity, ran his tongue quickly across the edge of her ear. The silence that followed was absolute. The drums stopped. All movement around the ceremonial grounds ceased as if time itself had been suspended. Lyra froze, her body rigid with shock, her eyes wide with disbelief as she slowly turned to face Eris. "What have you done?" she whispered, her voice a mixture of horror and astonishment. Eris knew immediately that he had made a terrible mistake, though he had no comprehension of its magnitude. I thought. I was trying to help." A path cleared through the stunned crowd as Chief Torkak approached, his imposing figure emanating authority. His expression was unreadable as he looked from his daughter to the human scientist. "Father," Lyra began, but the chieftain raised his hand for silence. "I witnessed what occurred," he stated, his deep voice resonating across the now silent gathering. "The Earthman has responded to the blood challenge with the ear acknowledgement." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Eris looked desperately at Lyra, who appeared equally stunned, though for entirely different reasons. "According to our most ancient laws," Chief Torkak continued, "when one accepts a dominance display and returns it in kind through the sacred touch of ears, the blood bond is invoked. It cannot be denied or revoked." He turned his penetrating gaze directly on Eris. "You have claimed my daughter as your mate under clan law." Eris felt the ground beneath him seem to shift. What? No, I didn't. I was just..." He stammered, unable to form coherent thoughts as the implications dawned on him. Lyra found her voice. "Father, he cannot understand our ways. This was clearly a mistake. The laws of our ancestors do not recognize mistakes, daughter," Chief Torkak replied firmly. "Only actions and their consequences. The bond has been witnessed by the clan under the blood moon." He addressed the gathered clan members. "From this night forward, the Earth scientist Dr. Eris Thorne and Lyra, daughter of Torkak, are bound by the blood bond. They are mates under clan law." As the chieftain's proclamation settled over the gathering, Eris caught Lyra's gaze. The mixture of shock, anger, and resignation in her amber eyes told him everything he needed to know. His impulsive action had irreversibly changed both their lives, binding them together by laws he didn't understand in a world where he remained an outsider. The ceremonial drums resumed, but with a different rhythm, one that Eris would later learn announced a new mating pair to the clan. As the crowd's attention gradually returned to the festival, Kale shot Eris a look of pure hatred before disappearing into the throng of clan members. Lyra stepped close to Eris, her voice low and controlled despite the fury evident in her eyes. "You have no idea what you've done, Earthman." Eris could only nod in mute agreement as the reality of his situation began to sink in. He had come to Kthar to study an alien ecosystem, but had instead become entangled in its most personal cultural traditions in ways he could never have anticipated. The morning after the Blood Moon festival dawned harsh and unforgiving, much like Lyra's demeanor as she led Eris to what would now be their shared dwelling. According to clan law, bonded mates lived together, and no exceptions would be made, not even for an accidental bonding with an off-worlder. Lyra's dwelling was a spacious structure built partially into the red sandstone cliff that sheltered the main clan settlement. It was larger than most due to her status as the chieftain's daughter, with separate chambers for sleeping, food preparation, and storage of hunting gear. The walls were adorned with trophies from significant hunts and woven tapestries depicting clan legends. "You will sleep there," Lyra stated tersely, pointing to a pile of woven mats in the corner of the main room, deliberately distant from her own sleeping chamber. "Touch nothing without permission, especially my hunting equipment." Eris set down his small pack of personal belongings. His research equipment would remain at his outpost, which he would still be permitted to visit for his studies. Small mercies, he supposed. "Lyra, I can't express how sorry I am," he began, not for the first time since the previous night's disaster. "If there's any way to undo this." "There isn't," she cut him off sharply. "The blood bond cannot be broken. It is our most sacred law." She moved around the dwelling, pointedly rearranging her possessions as if to reinforce the boundaries between them. "My father explained this to you last night. Were you not listening?" "I was listening," Eris said quietly. I'm still trying to understand the implications." Lyra paused her movements, fixing him with an intense stare. "The implications are that you are now my mate in the eyes of the clan. We are expected to hunt together, fight together, survive together." She gestured between them with obvious frustration. "How are we to do that when you can barely walk across the sands without stumbling?" Her words stung, but Eris couldn't deny their truth. He had struggled to adapt to Kthar's harsh environment, his human physiology ill-suited to the desert world's conditions despite his adaptive equipment. "I can learn," he offered, straightening his posture. "I'm a fast learner." Lyra gave a short, humorless laugh. "You will need to be, for both our sakes." She moved toward the entrance. "The clan already whispers that I am bound to the weakest mate in our history. I will not be dishonored further by your incompetence." With that, she left the dwelling, leaving Eris alone with the weight of his new reality. Through the entrance, he could see clan members passing by, some openly staring with curiosity or disdain. Among them was Kale, whose gaze held something far more dangerous than mere contempt. Eris didn't need to understand clan politics to recognize that he had made a powerful enemy. Later that day, Lyra returned to find Eris attempting to organize his meager belongings in the small space she had allocated him. She carried a bundle of materials that she dropped unceremoniously at his feet. "Basic survival gear," she explained curtly. "Water pouch, sand goggles, proper foot traps. Your earth equipment is inadequate for our terrain." Eris examined the items with genuine appreciation. "Thank you. This is unexpected." "It is not kindness," Lyra replied, though her tone had softened marginally. "A mate who cannot survive reflects poorly on both partners. I will not be known as one who failed to equip her bonded properly, regardless of how that bonding occurred." Eris nodded, understanding the complex mix of obligation and pride that motivated her actions. "Will you show me how to use them correctly?" Something flickered across Lyra's expression, perhaps surprise at his willingness to learn, or resignation to her role as teacher. "We begin tomorrow at first light. The clan expects us to participate in the water-finding ritual at the next oasis. It is tradition for newly bonded pairs." "Water finding?" Eris asked, his scientific curiosity momentarily overriding his awkwardness. "We track the underground water sources by reading the land," Lyra explained, her voice automatically shifting to a more instructional tone. "The presence of certain crystals near the surface indicates water below. Finding new sources honors the clan and demonstrates the bond strength." Eris nodded eagerly. "That's fascinating. On Earth, we use ground-penetrating radar for similar purposes, but reading natural indicators is a skill I'd love to learn." For the briefest moment, Lyra's defensive posture relaxed. "You truly find our ways interesting?" Beyond your scientific records? Of course, Eris replied earnestly. The Sandwolf clan has adapted to one of the harshest environments I've ever encountered. Your knowledge of this ecosystem far exceeds anything I could learn through instruments alone. Lyra studied him for a moment, as if seeing him in a slightly different light. Perhaps you are not entirely useless, Earthman. It wasn't exactly a compliment, but coming from Lyra, it felt like progress. The following days established a strained routine. Each morning before the twin suns rose too high, Lyra would take Eris into the desert surrounding the clan settlement, teaching him basic survival skills. She showed him how to walk efficiently across the shifting sands, how to identify the subtle signs of water-bearing rock formations, and how to recognize the tracks of dangerous predators. Eris proved to be an attentive student, his scientific mind quickly grasping the principles behind the techniques, even if his body struggled to execute them with the same natural grace as the clan members. For her part, Lyra was a demanding teacher, but not a cruel one. She corrected his mistakes firmly, but didn't mock his efforts as other clan members might have. One evening, as they returned from a particularly grueling training session focused on heat regulation, they found Kale waiting near their dwelling, accompanied by two other young warriors. The chieftain's daughter returns with her pet scientist, Kale called out, loud enough for nearby clan members to hear. Has he learned to drink water without spilling it yet? The warriors with him snickered. Eris felt Lyra tense beside him, her claws unconsciously extending at her sides. Save your breath, Kale, Lyra replied coolly. Don't you have hunting duties to attend to? Or have you been relieved of those as well? The barb struck home. Kale had recently failed to bring down a prized desert antelope, returning empty-handed from a hunt when others had succeeded. His status had suffered as a result. Kale's lips pulled back in a snarl. At least I hunt with true clan warriors, not soft-skinned off-worlders who hide behind female protection. Eris sensed the dangerous direction of the confrontation and spoke before thinking. The hunting techniques of the Sandwolf clan are remarkably efficient. Lyra has been teaching me about tracking patterns based on sand displacement. It's quite ingenious, actually. His genuine admiration for their methods was apparent, which seemed to momentarily confuse Kale, who had clearly expected fear or anger. You think flattery will earn you acceptance? Kale recovered, stepping closer. You know nothing of our ways. He knows more than you might think, Lyra interjected, moving slightly in front of Eris in a protective stance that wasn't lost on the watching clan members. And he respects our traditions enough to learn them properly. Kale's eyes narrowed. Then perhaps he's ready for the couple's trial? Or will you seek an exemption from your father for your weak mate? Lyra's expression remained impassive, but Eris felt her body tense further. We will face the trial when it is called, as is tradition. It approaches with the next alignment of the moons, Kale reminded her with malicious satisfaction. 2 cycles from now. Not much time to prepare your soft skin for the hunt. As Kale and his companions walked away, Eris turned to Lyra. What's the couple's trial? Lyra's expression was grim. A traditional hunt that newly bonded pairs must complete together. We track and bring down a storm lizard on the Howling Plateau. Seeing his blank expression, she elaborated. A predator 3 times your size with armored skin and venomous spines. The most dangerous creature in our territory. Eris swallowed hard. And this happens in 2 cycles, 2 weeks. Lyra nodded, her gaze following Kale's retreating form. I had hoped for more time to prepare you. Kale must have pressed the elders to schedule it early. She finally looked at him directly. This is bad, Earthman. The trial has claimed experienced hunters before. What happens if I fail? Eris asked, already suspecting the answer. If we survive but fail to make the kill, we face clan dishonor. If we do not survive, she left the implication hanging. That night, after Lyra had retired to her sleeping chamber, Eris sat awake, reviewing his research notes by the light of a small power cell. Among his data on Cthulhu's flora and fauna were his preliminary observations on the storm lizard, which he had documented from a safe distance during his early expeditions. The massive reptile had fascinated him from a biological perspective, with its remarkable adaptations to the harsh desert environment. Now, that academic interest had become intensely personal. If he was to survive the couple's trial, and more importantly, not bring dishonor to Lyra, whose reputation was already suffering because of their bond, he needed to understand the creature better than any hunter before him. As the days passed, their training intensified. Lyra focused on teaching Eris how to move silently across different terrains, how to use the clan's hunting weapons, and how to respond to her nonverbal signals during a hunt. For his part, Eris shared everything he had observed about the storm lizard's behavior patterns and potential vulnerabilities. Its armored hide is thinnest at the junction between neck and shoulder, he explained one evening as they sat outside their dwelling, reviewing hunting strategies. And its thermal regulation system is less efficient than one might expect. If it overheats, it becomes sluggish. Lyra looked genuinely impressed. How did you discover this? Infrared imaging equipment, Eris replied. I was studying how desert creatures maintain body temperature in extreme conditions. The storm lizard shows distinctive heat signatures after prolonged exertion. This knowledge could be valuable, Lyra admitted. No hunter has mentioned this weakness before, probably because anyone close enough to observe it in. An agitated state doesn't typically survive to report back, Eris suggested with a wry smile. To his surprise, Lyra laughed, a short, genuine sound that transformed her usually stern features. It was the first time he had heard her laugh, and the effect was remarkable. For a brief moment, the tension between them dissolved. You have strange courage, Earthman, she said, her amber eyes reflecting the firelight. Not the courage of a hunter, but something different. Is different courage still courage on Cthar? He asked. Lyra considered this. Perhaps. We shall see during the trial. As the date of the couple's trial approached, Eris noticed a subtle shift in how some clan members treated him. Word of his insights about the storm lizard had spread, and a few hunters had actually sought him out to discuss his observations. His willingness to face the trial despite his obvious physical disadvantages had earned him a measure of reluctant respect. Even more significant was the changing dynamic between himself and Lyra. The rigid formality was gradually giving way to a cautious partnership. They still maintained their separate spaces within the dwelling, but the hostile silence had been replaced by practical discussions about survival techniques and hunting strategies. The night before they were to depart for the Howling Plateau, Eris was surprised when Lyra placed a small object on the mat beside him. "What's this?" he asked, picking up what appeared to be a carved bone pendant on a leather cord. "Protection symbol," Lyra replied, her tone matter-of-fact, but with an underlying note he couldn't quite identify. All hunters wear one for the storm lizard hunt. Eris examined the intricate carving, a stylized representation of what he recognized as the Sandwolf clan's ancestral symbol. "Thank you," he said sincerely, placing it around his neck. "I'm honored." Lyra watched him for a moment, then said quietly, "You should sleep. Tomorrow will test us both." As she turned to leave for her own chamber, Eris called after her. "Lyra." She paused, looking back at him. "Regardless of what happens tomorrow, I want you to know I'm sorry for creating this situation, but I'm not sorry to have learned from you." In the dim light, he thought he saw her expression soften slightly. "Sleep well, Eris," she replied, using his name instead of Earthman for the first time. It felt like a small but significant victory. The journey to the Howling Plateau began before dawn, with Chief Torkak himself performing the departure ritual for the hunting pair. Several other clan members would follow at a distance to witness the trial, but were forbidden from intervening regardless of the outcome. The Howling Plateau lived up to its name. As they ascended the winding path to the elevated expanse of red stone, the wind whipped through ancient rock formations, creating an eerie, constant moan that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "The wind is good," Lyra explained as they moved cautiously across the plateau's surface. "It will mask our scent and sound." Eris nodded, focusing on maintaining the quiet walking technique she had taught him. The adaptive boots Lyra had modified for him were working well, allowing him to move more naturally across the uneven terrain. His pack contained water emergency medical supplies, and a few scientific instruments he'd insisted might prove useful. Storm lizards prefer the caves along the eastern ridge, Lyra continued, pointing toward a distant line of darker rock. They hunt at dawn and dusk, resting during the hottest hours. Which means our best opportunity is approaching, Eris noted, glancing at the position of the twin suns. We have perhaps 2 hours before the peak heat forces them to shelter. They move steadily toward the eastern ridge, with Lyra constantly scanning for tracks and signs of recent activity. Eris focused on the geological formations, remembering from his research that storm lizards preferred certain mineral-rich cave systems for their nesting sites. As they drew closer to the ridge, Lyra suddenly raised her hand in a signal to stop. She crouched, examining marks in the stone surface that Eris would have missed entirely. "Fresh," she whispered. "Very fresh. A large specimen passed here not more than an hour ago." Eris knelt beside her, studying the faint scrape marks. Heading toward that larger formation, he asked, indicating a towering rock structure ahead. Lyra nodded. "Good eye. That's likely its territory marker." They proceeded with increased caution, moving from one sheltering rock formation to another. Eris was acutely aware of the observers somewhere behind them, watching their progress. He wondered if Kale was among them, hoping to witness his failure. The thought had barely crossed his mind when disaster struck. As they skirted a narrow passage between two rock faces, the ground beneath Eris's foot gave way, a thin crust covering a pocket of loose sand. He stumbled forward with a startled cry, sending a cascade of small stones clattering down the passage ahead. Lyra spun toward him, alarm evident in her expression. Before either could react further, a terrifying sound echoed through the passage, a high-pitched, rattling hiss that raised the hair on the back of Eris's neck. "Move," Lyra commanded, pulling him roughly behind a large boulder as an enormous form erupted from a concealed cave entrance ahead. The storm lizard was even more impressive and terrifying, up close than Eris had anticipated. Standing nearly 3 meters tall on powerful hind legs, its body was covered in overlapping plates of natural armor in mottled red and brown. Its elongated head swung from side to side as it sensed the disturbance, forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. "It hasn't seen us yet," Lyra whispered, her body tense and ready. "But it knows something is here." Eris's mind raced, recalling everything he knew about the creature. "Its visual acuity is poor in bright light," he whispered back. "But its chemoreceptors are extraordinarily sensitive. It's tasting the air for our scent." Lyra nodded grimly, which the wind is now carrying directly to it. As if confirming her assessment, the storm lizard's head snapped in their direction, its vertical pupils narrowing to slits in the bright daylight. It gave another rattling hiss, this one clearly a warning. "We need to separate," Lyra said quickly. "I'll draw its attention. You circle around to the position we discussed." She grabbed his arm when he began to protest. "This was our strategy, Eris. Trust me." Before he could respond, she was moving, darting from their hiding place with astonishing speed and agility. The storm lizard immediately focused on her, its massive body pivoting with surprising grace for its size. Eris forced himself to wait 3 heartbeats, as they had planned, then move in the opposite direction, using the rock formations for cover. Their strategy relied on the creature's limited ability to track multiple targets simultaneously, a weakness Eris had observed in his studies. Lyra was magnificent in action. She moved like flowing water across the rocky terrain, always just beyond the reach of the creature's snapping jaws or sweeping tail. She wasn't attempting to wound it yet, merely to keep its attention fixed entirely on her. Meanwhile, Eris positioned himself behind and slightly above the storm lizard, climbing to a ledge that offered the angle they needed. From his pack, he withdrew a specially modified sensor that he'd adapted based on his research of the creature's thermal vulnerabilities. The device emitted a focused beam of infrared radiation, not powerful enough to cause harm, but precisely calibrated to the frequency that would irritate the sensitive thermal receptors along the storm lizard's spine. In theory, It should create a momentary disruption to the creature's temperature regulation system. Seeing that Eris was in position, Lyra executed the next phase of their plan. With deliberate precision, she threw a small, sharp hunting blade that struck the creature's flank, not penetrating the armored hide, but causing enough pain to enrage it further. The storm lizard reared up to its full height, exposing the vulnerable area at the junction of neck and shoulder that Eris had identified. In that critical moment, he activated the device. The effect was immediate and more dramatic than either had anticipated. The storm lizard convulsed, its body arching as the thermal disruption confused its nervous system. It was a temporary effect, lasting perhaps 10 seconds, but it was enough. Lyra moved with lethal grace, her hunting spear driving upward into the exposed, vulnerable spot with perfect accuracy and tremendous force. The storm lizard gave an ear-splitting screech, its massive body thrashing as it tried to dislodge the weapon. Lyra maintained her grip on the spear, using the creature's own movements to drive the blade deeper. With a final, guttural sound, the storm lizard collapsed, its massive form crashing to the plateau's surface with an impact Eris could feel through the stone beneath him. For a moment, the only sound was the constant moan of the wind. Then, from somewhere behind them, came the unmistakable sound of witnessing clan members acknowledging a successful hunt, a ululating cry that echoed across the plateau. Eris carefully made his way down from his position, his legs shaky with the aftermath of adrenaline. Lyra stood beside her kill, her chest heaving with exertion, but her posture proud. When she saw him approach, something remarkable happened. She extended her hand toward him in a gesture of shared triumph. "We did it," Eris said, still somewhat in disbelief as he took her offered hand. "We did," Lyra agreed, and there was genuine respect in her eyes. "Your strange courage proved itself today, Earthman." As the witnessing clan members approached to verify and honor the kill, Eris realized something had fundamentally shifted between them. They had faced death together and emerged victorious through true partnership, his knowledge combined with her skill. The bond that had begun as an embarrassing accident now felt like something real, something earned. That night, they made camp on the plateau. As tradition dictated, the successful hunters would remain with their kill until morning, when others would help transport the valuable prize back to the clan settlement. The witnesses had withdrawn to their own camp some distance away, leaving Lyra and Eris alone with their thoughts and the massive form of the storm lizard. Lyra had performed the ritual honoring of the creature's spirit, a ceremony Eris watched with respectful silence. Afterward, they sat beside a small fire, the unfamiliar stars of Kthares night sky wheeling overhead. "You were right about its vulnerability," Lyra said, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between them. "No hunter has ever taken down a storm lizard so efficiently." "It was your skill that made the kill," Eris replied honestly. "I just provided information." Lyra shook her head. "You provided more than information. Your device, the way you use science to create an advantage. It was like nothing our hunters have ever conceived." She looked at him directly. It was honorable. Coming from Lyra, the word carried immense weight. "Thank you," he said simply. "The clan will view you differently after today," she continued. "You have earned respect." "And what about you?" Eris asked, surprising himself with his boldness. How do you view me now?" Lyra considered him for a long moment, the firelight playing across her features. "I see someone who thinks differently than any clan member I have known. Someone who finds strength in knowledge rather than physical power." A small smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "Someone who licks ears without understanding the consequences." Eris laughed, relieved that she could now reference the incident with humor rather than anger. "That was not my finest moment. It led us here," Lyra observed, gesturing to the night around them. "The successful hunt, their newfound respect." "Yes," Eris agreed softly. "I suppose it did." Something shifted in Lyra's gaze then, a warmth he hadn't seen before. She moved closer to him, her movement deliberate but unhurried. When she was beside him, she did something unexpected. She gently bumped her shoulder against his, a gesture of affection he had observed between clan members but had never expected to experience himself. "We should rest," she said, but made no move to create distance between them. "Tomorrow will bring new challenges." Eris nodded, acutely aware of her proximity and the significance of the gesture she had shared. As they settled beside the fire, closer than they had ever slept before, he felt a profound sense of belonging that had eluded him his entire life. Even on Earth, here, on this alien world, he had found connection in the most unexpected way. What neither of them realized was that eyes watched them from the darkness beyond the witnesses' camp. Kale had observed their successful hunt with growing rage and resentment. The plan had been for the soft-skinned to fail spectacularly, perhaps even to die during the hunt. Instead, he had proven himself in a way that would elevate his standing within the clan. As Eris and Lyra slept, Kale slipped away into the night, his mind turning over plans for a different kind of hunt, one that would ensure the Earth scientist never returned to the clan settlement to enjoy his newfound respect. The next morning dawned clear and hot, the twin suns already climbing in Kthar's pale sky as Eris and Lyra prepared for the journey back to the clan settlement. Other clan members had arrived at first light to help prepare the storm lizard carcass for transport. Its meat, hide, and various parts were all valuable resources that would benefit the entire clan. The return journey would take them through the treacherous canyon of Echoes, a winding passage through redstone cliffs that offered the most direct route back to the settlement. The canyon was known for its unpredictable rock slides, but its shade made it the only viable path during the heat of midday. As they began their descent into the canyon, Eris noticed a subtle tension in Lyra's demeanor, different from her usual alertness. "Something's wrong?" he asked quietly. She glanced at him, impressed by his growing ability to read her moods. "Perhaps nothing, but Kale was among the witnesses yesterday, yet I haven't seen him this morning." Eris understood her concern immediately. Kale's absence was conspicuous, particularly given how eagerly he had pushed for this trial, expecting Eris to fail. "You think he might try something?" Eris finished her thought, not phrasing it as a question. Lyra nodded grimly. "Kale does not accept defeat gracefully, and in his mind, our successful hunt was his defeat." The canyon narrowed as they progressed, towering walls of striated redstone rising on either side. The hunting party had spread out in a loose formation, with Lyra and Eris near the middle, surrounded by clan members carrying portions of their prize. The atmosphere was jovial, with occasional calls and whoops celebrating the successful hunt. Perhaps it was his heightened awareness after Lyra's warning, or perhaps it was the scientific observational skills he'd honed over years of fieldwork, but something caught Eris's attention as they rounded a sharp bend in the canyon. A subtle displacement of stones on the cliff edge above, a shadow that moved against the wind rather than with it. He grabbed Lyra's arm, stopping her mid-stride. "Up there," he whispered urgently, tilting his head slightly toward the cliff edge without obviously looking up. Lyra followed his gaze, her enhanced vision immediately spotting what he had somehow sensed. "Rock slide," she hissed, then raised her voice to alert the others. "Danger from above." Her warning came just as a cascade of boulders began tumbling down the canyon wall directly toward them. The hunting party scattered, dropping their burdens and diving for cover against the opposite wall or beneath overhangs. Eris felt Lyra's powerful grip on his arm as she pulled him toward a recessed area in the canyon wall, but he could already see they wouldn't reach it in time. Making a split-second decision, he changed their direction, pushing her instead toward a narrow crevice just large enough for one person. "Go!" he shouted, using all his strength to propel her into the protected space as the first rocks crashed down around them. Pain exploded in his left leg as a falling stone struck him, sending him sprawling onto the canyon floor. He rolled desperately, narrowly avoiding a boulder that would have crushed him completely. Scrambling behind a large rock that had already fallen, he huddled there as the rock slide continued for what seemed like an eternity, but was likely only seconds. When the dust began to settle, Eris cautiously looked out from his shelter. The canyon path was now blocked by a pile of rubble where they had been standing moments before. Several clan members were injured, though none appeared fatally. He tried to stand, but collapsed with a gasp of pain when he put weight on his injured leg. Eris. Lyra's voice came from the crevice where he'd pushed her. She emerged, covered in dust, but unharmed, and rushed to his side. How badly are you hurt? I think it's broken, he admitted, trying to keep his voice steady despite the waves of pain radiating from his lower leg. But I'll manage. Lyra quickly examined the injury, her experienced hands gentle but thorough. A clean break. We can splint it, but you won't be walking far. She looked up at the cliff edge where the rock slide had originated, her eyes narrowing. That was no natural slide. Following her gaze, Eris caught a fleeting glimpse of movement along the canyon rim before it disappeared. Kale. Almost certainly, Lyra growled, her expression darkening with fury. This is beyond rivalry. This is attempted murder. The other clan members were regrouping, checking injuries and assessing the blocked path. One of the elders approached them. The path is completely blocked, he reported. We must backtrack and take the longer route through the dry riverbed. Lyra nodded, her face grim. My mate is injured. We'll need to fashion a stretcher. The elder glanced at Eris's leg with concern. That will slow our return, and we have limited water for the longer route. I can walk with assistance, Eris insisted, though the pain in his leg suggested otherwise. We won't delay the group. Lyra's expression was unreadable as she considered their options. Finally, she turned to the elder. Take half the hunting party and the storm lizard trophies back through the dry riverbed. Report what happened here. Tell my father that Kale has violated clan law by attacking a successful hunting pair. The rest will remain with us and follow more slowly. The elder seemed about to object, then noticed the determined set of Lyra's jaw and nodded in agreement. As the clan members reorganized according to her instructions, Lyra knelt beside Eris again. I know what you're thinking, he said quietly. You want to go after Kale. He attempted to kill you. To kill us both, she replied, her voice low and intense. Such an action cannot go unpunished. It was me he wanted to eliminate, Eris pointed out. I'm the obstacle to whatever he had planned. Lyra's eyes flashed. You are my mate under clan law. An attack on you is an attack on me, on my honor, on my family's standing. She paused, studying his face. You saved me from the rock slide. You pushed me to safety at risk to yourself. Eris shrugged, wincing as the movement jostled his injured leg. It was instinct. It was protection, Lyra corrected, as a mate should provide. Something in her expression softened momentarily before hardening again with resolve. We will not follow the others through the dry riverbed. There is another way, through the caves. It is faster but more dangerous, and it might let us intercept Kale, Eris concluded, understanding her strategy. Yes, she confirmed, but with your injury, I'll manage, Eris said firmly. We'll need evidence of what he did, though. The clan won't take our word against his without proof. Lyra's expression showed surprise and respect at his understanding of clan politics. You learn quickly, Earthman. With the help of two loyal hunters who volunteered to accompany them, they fashioned a sturdy splint for Eris's leg. While this was happening, Lyra climbed carefully to examine the origin point of the rock slide, returning with what appeared to be fragments of some primitive explosive compound. Mining crystals, she explained, showing them to Eris. Used for excavating building materials. Kale must have taken them from the clan stores. Physical evidence, Eris noted with satisfaction. And would he have left traces? Footprints, residue on his hands. Lyra nodded, impressed again by his thinking. Yes, the crystals leave a distinctive red residue that takes days to wear off. If we can catch him before he has time to thoroughly cleanse himself. Their small party of 4 set off toward the cave entrance, with Eris supported between the two hunters. Despite the pain in his leg, he felt a strange exhilaration. For the first time since arriving on Cthar, he was fully engaged in clan matters, using his scientific training in ways he never could have anticipated. The cave system was as beautiful as it was treacherous. Vast chambers of crystalline formations illuminated by bioluminescent fungi that cast an ethereal blue glow over everything. Under different circumstances, Eris would have been ecstatic to study these unique life forms, but now he focused solely on moving as efficiently as possible despite his injury. The caves connect to tunnels that emerge near the settlement's water source, Lyra explained as they navigated the complex passages. If Kale returns to the clan, he will need to cleanse the residue from his hands. The water source is his most likely destination. As they progressed deeper into the cave system, Eris noticed Lyra frequently touching the protection symbol she had given him, which still hung around his neck. The gesture seemed unconscious, almost like a reassurance. "This isn't just for protection against storm lizards, is it?" he asked quietly when the other two hunters had moved slightly ahead to scout the path. Lyra glanced at the pendant, then at him. "No," she admitted. "It is a family symbol. In our tradition, it is given to those we truly consider our own." The implication wasn't lost on Eris. Despite the circumstances of their bonding, Lyra had given him something deeply personal, a gesture of acceptance he hadn't fully appreciated until now. "Thank you," he said simply. "I'll honor it." She nodded once, then moved forward to rejoin their companions, but not before Eris caught a glimpse of emotion in her eyes that hadn't been there before. The journey through the caves took several hours, with Eris's injury slowing their progress. By the time they emerged into the fading light of dusk, the pain in his leg had become nearly unbearable, though he refused to complain. The clan's water source, a spring-fed pool surrounded by rare vegetation, lay just ahead. As they approached cautiously, Lyra signaled for silence. Sure enough, a lone figure crouched at the water's edge, scrubbing vigorously at his hands. Kale was so intent on removing the incriminating residue that he failed to notice their approach until they had him surrounded. When he finally sensed their presence and spun around, his expression shifted rapidly from shock to fury to a calculating calm. "The Earthman survives," he observed coldly. "With assistance, it seems." "The Earthman has a name," Lyra replied, her voice equally frigid. "Dr. Eris Thorn, who is bonded to me by clan law and who successfully completed the couple's trial. The same Eris Thorn you attempted to murder in the Canyon of Echoes." Kale's eyes narrowed. A bold accusation. The rockslide was a natural occurrence, unfortunate but not uncommon in the canyon. Eris spoke then, his voice steady despite his pain. "Natural rockslides don't leave residue from mining crystals." He nodded toward Kale's hands, where traces of red still clung to his fur despite his efforts to wash them away. "The same residue that's still on your hands." Kale snarled, abandoning his pretense. "The clan doesn't need alien weakness in our bloodlines. You should never have been allowed to claim Lyra." "I didn't claim her," Eris responded calmly. "I made a cultural mistake that had consequences neither of us expected. But since then, we have faced the couple's trial together and succeeded where many pure-blooded clan members have failed. Through trickery and alien devices." Kale spat. "Through intelligence and cooperation," Lyra countered. "The qualities that have allowed our clan to survive for generations on this harsh world." She stepped closer to Kale, her posture radiating authority. "You have violated our most sacred laws, attacking a successful hunting pair, attempting to kill a recognized clanmate, using forbidden methods that endangered multiple hunters." Kale's hand moved subtly toward a blade at his belt, but before he could grasp it, the two hunters who accompanied them stepped forward, making it clear that any violence would be met with immediate response. "You will face the chieftain's judgment," Lyra continued, "as is our way." For a moment, Eris thought Kale might still attempt something desperate, but after a tense silence, the warrior's shoulders slumped slightly in defeat. He knew as well as they did that the evidence against him was irrefutable. As they escorted their prisoner back to the settlement, Eris felt the pain in his leg intensify with each step. By the time the clan's dwellings came into view, his vision had begun to blur at the edges. The last thing he remembered was Lyra's concerned face as darkness claimed him. Eris awoke in their shared dwelling, his leg properly splinted and the pain reduced to a dull throb. The light suggested it was morning, though whether one day or several had passed, he couldn't tell. As his senses returned, He became aware of Lyra seated beside him, mixing something in a stone bowl. "You're finally awake," she said, setting aside her work. "The fever broke during the night." "Fever?" Eris asked, his voice rough from disuse. "The break became infected," she explained, helping him sit up enough to drink from a water pouch. "Our healer and I used a combination of clan remedies and your earth medicines. It was educational." There was something different in her manner, a new ease in her presence around him, as if some final barrier had fallen. "Kale?" he asked after drinking. "Judged and sentenced by my father. He has been exiled from the clan, his name removed from our histories." Her expression was solemn but satisfied. "It is our harshest punishment, to be forgotten," Eris nodded, understanding the severity in a culture that valued lineage and remembrance so highly. "How long was I unconscious?" 3 days, Lyra replied. "You should know that while you were fevered, a signal came from your Earth outpost. A rescue ship approaches. It will arrive tomorrow." The news struck Eris with unexpected force. In the intensity of recent events, he had almost forgotten that his assignment on Cthar had always been temporary, that Earth would eventually recall him or send replacement researchers. "I see," he said quietly, trying to process the implications. His gaze met Lyra's, and in her amber eyes he saw the same conflict he felt, a recognition of choices that now lay before them. "The clan would understand if you wish to return to your world," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "The blood bond was not of your choosing, wasn't it?" Eris asked softly. "I made the gesture, however ignorant I was of its meaning. Out of misplaced protection," she reminded him, not understanding what it meant. "But now I do understand," he replied. "I understand what it means to be bound to someone by choice and respect, not just by accident or tradition." He reached for her hand, a gesture that would have been unthinkable weeks ago. "The question is, do you want me to stay?" Lyra's composure faltered for the first time since he'd known her. "What I want," she began, then paused, collecting herself. "What I want is for you to make your choice freely, not out of obligation to clan law or to me." "Then let me be clear," Eris said, holding her gaze steadily. "I've learned more about myself on Cthar than in all my years on Earth. I've discovered strengths I never knew I had, found purpose beyond observation and analysis. For the first time, I'm not just studying life, I'm living it." He squeezed her hand gently. "And I found something with you that I never expected to find anywhere, let alone on a desert world light years from home." The tension in Lyra's posture softened, and she leaned slightly toward him. "The clan has seen your worth," she said quietly. "Your knowledge has already improved our water filtration methods. The elders speak of your courage in the Canyon of Echoes." A small smile tugged at her lips. "And some of the younger ones have asked if you might teach them about the stars and other worlds." "Is that your way of saying the clan wants me to stay?" Eris asked, a smile forming on his own face. "It is my way of saying that you have a place here," Lyra replied, "if you choose to claim it." The next day, as Cthar's twin sons reached their zenith, the Earth rescue ship descended through the atmosphere, landing on the flat plain beyond the clan settlement. Eris stood at the boundary of clan territory, supported by a walking staff but otherwise recovered enough to stand on his own. Beside him was Lyra, and behind them, to Eris's surprise, stood Chief Torkak and a significant portion of the clan. The ship's hatch opened, and 2 figures in Earth Expedition uniforms emerged, approaching cautiously across the sand. "Dr. Thorne," the lead officer called as they drew near, "we come to extract you. Your research data has been invaluable, but the department feels you've been in the field long enough." Eris nodded in acknowledgement, but made no move toward the ship. "I appreciate the concern," he replied formally, "but I need to inform the department that my status has changed." The officers exchanged glances. "Change how exactly?" "I've established a permanent research partnership with the Sandwolf clan," Eris explained, choosing his words carefully. "More specifically, I've entered into a formal bond with Lyra, daughter of Chief Torkak. According to both clan law and my personal choice, I am remaining on Cthar indefinitely." The officer's expression registered shock, then concern. "Dr. Thorne, if you're under duress, or if there's been some kind of cultural misunderstanding. There was a misunderstanding, Eris interrupted with a smile, but it's been thoroughly sorted out. He turned slightly to include Lyra in the conversation. I'm exactly where I want to be, doing what I believe is most valuable, building a bridge of knowledge between our worlds. After much discussion and the transmission of his research data to the ship, the Earth representatives reluctantly accepted his decision. They left supplies, communications equipment, and promises to maintain contact, along with expressions of disbelief that would likely continue for years to come. As the ship departed, rising through Kthares' atmosphere until it was merely a glint in the pale sky, Eris felt Lyra's hand slip into his. "Second thoughts?" she asked quietly. He shook his head. "None." Chief Torkak approached them, his imposing figure casting a long shadow in the afternoon light. "The Earth ship is gone," he observed, "and you remain." "I remain," Eris confirmed. The chieftain studied him for a long moment, then nodded with what appeared to be approval. "Then it is time to make what began by accident into something chosen freely and honored by all." He turned to address the gathered clan members. "Tonight, we shall witness the willing bond between Lyra, daughter of Torkak, and Dr. Eris Thorn of Earth, now the Sandwolf clan." A murmur of approval spread through the assembled clan members. Lyra turned to Eris, her amber eyes reflecting the desert sunlight. "Are you ready for another ceremony?" she asked, with warmth in her voice that still surprised and delighted him. "This time without the confusion. As long as you clearly explain which parts involve ear contact," he replied with a grin. Her laugh, once so rare, now came easily. "I think you've mastered that particular custom, Earthman." That evening, as the twin suns set behind the distant mountains, casting the desert in shades of gold and crimson, the clan gathered in the ceremonial circle. Unlike the Blood Moon Festival where their story had begun, this ceremony was conducted with Eris as a willing and informed participant. Chief Torkak performed the ancient rites, speaking of bonds forged in challenge and respect, of strengths found in differences, of two worlds meeting in understanding rather than fear. Eris and Lyra exchanged the traditional gestures, this time with Eris fully aware of their significance, including the gentle touch to each other's ears that had once caused such chaos. When the formal ceremony concluded, Eris surprised the gathering by presenting Lyra with a gift he had prepared in secret. Using materials from both his Earth equipment and local resources, he had fashioned a pendant that combined the Earth symbol for scientific discovery with the Sandwolf clan's ancestral mark. "On Earth, we exchanged tokens during bonding ceremonies," he explained as he placed it around her neck. "This represents both worlds, joined as we are." Lyra touched the pendant with wonder. Then, in a move that startled and delighted the watching clan members, pulled Eris into an embrace that combined clan tradition with human affection, a perfect symbol of their unique bond. The celebration continued long into the night, with feasting, music, and the telling of stories. Many clan members approached them with gifts and expressions of respect, including several young ones who bombarded Eris with questions about Earth and the stars beyond Kthares skies. As the festivities began to quiet, Eris and Lyra slipped away to a high ridge overlooking the clan's settlement and the vast desert beyond. The night was clear, the unfamiliar constellations brilliant against the dark sky. "Look there," Eris said, pointing to a faint star barely visible among its brighter neighbors. "That's Sol, Earth's sun. So distant now, it's just another point of light." Lyra followed his gaze. "Do you miss it?" "Parts of it," he admitted honestly. "But Earth was never truly home in the way that matters most." He turned to her, taking both her hands in his. "Home isn't just a place. It's belonging, purpose, connection." "And you found those here?" she asked, though the question held no doubt, only a desire to hear him say it. "I found them with you," he answered simply. "In the most unexpected place, through the most unlikely beginning." He smiled, remembering the moment that had changed everything. "Who would have thought that accidentally licking your ear would lead to this?" Lyra laughed, the sound carrying across the desert night. "The ancestors work in mysterious ways, Earthman." She leaned closer, her forehead touching his in a gesture of deep intimacy in clan custom. Or perhaps they knew exactly what they were doing. As Kthar's moons rose over the horizon, casting the desert in silver light, Eris and Lyra stood together at the boundary between two worlds, not as reluctant partners bound by misunderstanding, but as willing mates who had found in each other the strengths they each needed, creating something new and unexpected from what had begun as a cultural accident. In the settlement below, the clan celebrated the union of different worlds. Above, under alien stars, Eris and Lyra embraced the future they had chosen together, one that neither could have imagined when their journey began, but that now felt like the only path that had ever made sense. And somewhere in the vastness of the universe, Eris thought perhaps the cosmos itself was amused by how a single moment of cross-cultural confusion had led to something so genuine and profound, a reminder that sometimes the most meaningful connections begin in the most unlikely ways.